So, Hare Krishna. I came to Krishna consciousness in July of 1987. I met the devotees in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. At that time, I grew up in New Jersey, and I grew up in the Unitarian Universalist Church, which is a very liberal church. You can be in the Unitarian Church and be an atheist or an agnostic. It's more humanist than it is religious. There's a law for creating a church in America that you don't actually have to believe in a deity. As long as a group of people share a set of beliefs, they can register legally as a religion. Unitarian Church, Unitarian Universalist, is mostly people who grew up Christian, but for some reason or other, when they had more questions beyond what they could get from Christianity, and many doubts, and some of them even doubted the existence of God altogether. Anyway, so it was a branch off, actually, of Protestantism and became Unitarian Universalism. And so that's what I grew up. Many of the people I knew from this church were atheists and agnostic, but searching in different ways. Srila Prabhupada used to actually preach at Unitarian churches because they're very liberal and open to other faiths. They don't have a dogma. So when I was in high school, I was very involved in the Unitarian Universalist high school youth group. We would have weekly meetings, we would have regional gatherings, like on the weekends. We would all camp out in a church with some adults, like watching us, but we would be there for the whole weekend doing workshops and different things. And then we would have week-long gatherings in the summertime at camps. And it was a very idealistic group. They had this idea that they wanted to get rid of all the bombs, feed all of the starving people in the world. Some, like this kind of idealism to make the world a better place. It wasn't really talk about, heaven or God or religion, but there was some idea to do something good for the world and for humanity, to protect the environment, things like this. And there was a lot of bonding. There was like a lot of community feeling. So from this group, I developed a lot of idealism that I believed that the human race could live together without all this war and conflict, because I had some practical experience. Of course, it was only a high school group on the weekend. So I thought, how can I translate this into my adult life? Now I'd gotten this idealistic spirit, and I thought, in the normal thing, you go to college, you get a degree so that you can get a good job, so that you can get married and, be in a position where you can take care of your wife and children. But then, from this youth group, I had learned about how the U.S. government was spending like 50% of the taxpayers' money to build bombs, and then next year more bombs, and next year more bombs. And I thought, if somebody is like suicidal, then they put them away in the room with the rubber walls, crazy, right? So here we are, we're the human race, all these sophisticated, the government, just using all the people's money to build more bombs to kill all of us. So I thought, we're crazy, the whole human race, So I kind of wanted to drop out of the normal track. That the leaders were saying is okay to do, because I thought they're not doing something very sane. So I didn't have an alternative. I had this, from the youth group, I had some hope or conviction that something within the human spirit and the human psyche is possible for something better. But I had no idea how to translate that from this high school youth group to an adult. So I was searching. I started reading books on Buddhism and Taoism and Gandhi and Christianity also, the Baha'i. I was going to different groups. Anything that came across, when I went to college, I didn't take, like business management. I took a class on Gandhi, I took a class on Thoreau, I took a class on South Indian drumming, I took a class on modern, and it was completely, and my whole goal in college is I wanted to drop out soon enough before I wasted too much of my parents' money, because I knew I was not there to get a degree and do the corporate track. But I didn't know what else to do. I'd finished high school and I didn't know. So, and I did drop out at one point. I went to college. It was I went for 1 year of college, then I went for the second year, for a full year, and then I took a semester off, and I started the third year. And in the very beginning of the third year, so this is like spring semester starting in like late January, it's in Connecticut, then on the television came, it was a 3-night series on primetime television, national, all across the country, But it wasn't like ordinary show about romance and, violence or whatever. It was a very spiritually oriented show. So all the New Age newspapers had a big blast about it, because this was very unusual that nationally on primetime television at the the prime time, like 8 to 10, this was everywhere. So, and it was called Out on a Limb, 3-night show, and it was by Shirley MacLaine. She's a famous actor, but she had gotten into had gotten into a whole spiritual search herself, and she was a famous person, so she was able to get this on the prime time. And the show was all about out-of-body experience and reincarnation and astral body travel and different kinds of, spiritual or subtly spiritual, mystical types of topics. So this was so I watched the whole thing. I was, each night I was glued to the television. And my housemates at college were looking, oh, what's the big deal, They were just, and so after that I just decided, I don't know what to do, but I don't belong here in this college. And I went around to all of my professors and I got the signature to sign out. You can just leave, but if you sign out officially, then your parents can, get some of the money back. But my parents never followed up. I got all the signature and they never, anyway, and then I had one contact from that youth group, the Unitarian youth group. There was one girl who I took to be like my older sister. I just thought she was the greatest, for no particular reason, that we didn't know each other very well. She was from another part of the country, and there was just, during the national gatherings, we would sometimes meet, and I just looked up to her like a sister. So I made sure I would keep her contact, and I would send some friendly letters occasionally. And I knew that she was in college in Olympia, Washington, at the Evergreen State College. And so I wanted to follow this inspiration, and I called her, and I asked, if I come out to Olympia, Washington, can you put me up for a short time, and then meanwhile I'll look for a job and like this, and then get my own place? And she said, sure. So I went out, and I stayed there a little bit, and then I got a job at some restaurant doing some menial work, and got my own place with some of the other students. Was there about 3 months, where I had been at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and there the whole campus was in like political unrest about apartheid in South Africa, and they were banging garbage can lids outside the administration window, and there's a lot of anger, and everything was like that. But where in the Evergreen State College campus, I didn't enroll there, but that's where I was associating with the students there. You would go into the student union, and then on the wall there would be posters about yoga and meditation and reincarnation. It was much more spiritually oriented. It was a very beautiful campus in the woods. And the whole mood there was very different, much more gentle and more spiritual. So I stayed there about 3 months. Then with some friends we went back east. I went to a rainbow gathering. This was July of '87 in North Carolina. The Hare Krishna camp was there. And there were many different camps there. You could go get your meals. And one day I decided I'll go to the Hare Krishna camp. So I went up to their table. Nobody was there. There was a bunch of books. I kind of looked at them. It was very simple prasadam, some dried taco shells with cheese. I took some prasadam, my first prasadam. No devotee was there. I didn't get to talk to anyone. And then I looked around. After some, I left. So then when we were driving back from there, from North Carolina to New Jersey, then some of us were in New Jersey, a little gathering there from the Unitarian youth. And then from there I decided to go to Boston. And I got a ride. And on the way to New Jersey or just leaving New Jersey, we saw this, got out and saw this big rainbow. And I took that as an auspicious sign. And then I went to Boston, and just when I was in Boston staying with a friend for a few days, then one day on my own, I decided, we were in Cambridge, we'd go for a walk. So I got up and went for a walk over the bridge into Boston, was walking around Boston. And then, I heard a drum. I was just getting ready to go back to Cambridge, and I heard a drum in the distance. It was in the Boston Commons. So I walked over. What is this? Who's making music? And it was the devotees. They were doing a sit-down Harinam on a carpet with a microphone and a speaker, and they had a book table. One sannyasi was there, Raghunath Swami. And so I was listening to them, and one of the devotees was in front passing out BTGs. And after a while I approached and I got a BTG. And I was sitting there reading it, and after a while they noticed, I'm still there reading the magazine. So they came over and they gave me a garland and a card for their center, and they said, we're having a program tonight at our temple. Why don't you come? Like at 6 o'clock or... So, okay. So instead of going back to Cambridge, I hung around Boston for the afternoon, and And then I went to the temple that, got there on time. And there was a few people waiting outside, and then they came, unlocked the door, they brought us upstairs. They gave us dinner, prasadam. And that Raghunath Swami was talking to each person one by one, and after a little while he came to me and he was talking with me, just briefly, just being friendly. Then we could hear the kirtan started downstairs, and after we finished our prasadam, we went downstairs and we joined the kirtan. And then Raghunath Swami gave a class, and it was question and answer. And then after that we were in the lobby and we were just talking, and they gave me 4 small books as a gift. And then I was going to be moving out to Amherst, so I'd gotten the ride to Boston, like on the way. And they told me, we're going to go out to Amherst in 2 weeks to this young people's house to do a program, and they gave me the phone number, so I took that with me. So anyway, I went back to my friends in Cambridge, and over the next week or 2, I started to read those small books, and I liked what I read. I had been searching, and out of anything I had read or visited, I liked very. It was very idealistic and visionary. Had a scope for the whole world. And also everything that Prabhupada was mentioning, he was quoting, and there were answered different questions that none of the other books that I had read could give answers to. And then he would quote every time, like very authoritatively from the Vedas, from the Bhagavad Gita, from different scriptures. So it just lined up for me. Everything I had been looking at or looking into, it just lined up. It made sense to me. So I went to that, when I went over to Amherst, and I went to that meeting. I called up that house, and the devotees came out from Boston again, Raghunath Swami and a few brahmacharis. At that time they gave me the Bhagavad Gita. And anyway, from that time I got involved in Boston. They taught me how to chant. They gave me beads, I started chanting 16 rounds. Soon after that I went out to Seattle. That's where I actually moved first because my friends were out in Olympia. I wanted to visit them. So I actually took a bus all the way out to Seattle, and I got down in Seattle and went to the temple, and I just went to visit, and I had some prasadam, and then I was just leaving the Seattle temple after lunch, and I was in the parking lot, and one devotee came up. He was just coming in. Said, "Hey, who are you? I never seen you before. What's your name? You're just being friendly. Where are you from?" I told him I'm traveling. I just came and visiting, and he said, "Well, why don't you stay here?" And I said, "Well, I just, came to, I don't know." And he said, no, don't go anywhere. Stay here. He went inside. And a few minutes later, he came back. He said, "I talked to the temple president. You could stay." Turns out a new temple president was going to be flying in the next day. So the VIP room they had vacated for the new temple president. So that was empty. So they put me up there. I just walked in off the street, basically. And I went and got up, for Mangalarti, chanted 6, and then I stayed 2 weeks. I was wore a white dhoti. And I would do the whole morning program, and I would cut vegetables in the kitchen. They were all Prabhupada disciples there. Navayogendra Swami came to visit. Vipramuka Swami was living there. Patraka was there. Gauridas Pandit, he was the Harinam leader. He was my first Harinam Sankirtan leader. He would take me and one other devotee, Bhakta Rab, on Harinam Sankirtan at Pike Street Market in Seattle 4 days a week. He had been trained by Vishnu Jan Swami from the Radha Damodar party. And there was Makanchor and his wife, Krishna Vallabha. There was Janamajaya and his wife, who I can't remember her name. And Vyaspad he was the new temple president who flew in the next day. He was very, very kind to me, saved my life, picked me up out of the material world, and placed me at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So they were very, very sweet. Radha Nila Madhav, with the deities, they were all very, very sweet. It was wonderful. I stayed 2 weeks. Then I was new, and I left and went to go visit my friends in Olympia. And then from there I ended up going back home to my parents' house in New Jersey. I was chanting 16 rounds and following, and trying to just sort of digest everything, see what I wanted to do with this. I would go to the Sunday feast in Brooklyn while I was at my parents' every Sunday. For about 6 weeks, I got a job driving a taxi in New Jersey. And then after 6 weeks, I decided I really liked that Seattle temple. It was very nice, So I called back up and I asked, "Can I come back?" And they said, "It's all right, you can come." So I had a little money now from driving a taxi. So I flew out there. They picked me up at the Seattle airport. And I stayed there about 6 weeks in the temple. And then Trivikram Swami came through from Berkeley. And then, and he was visiting. And he liked Harinam very much, and I really liked Harinam. And he has a very strong voice for Harinam. And he was going every day, and I would go with him and a few of us. And he told the temple authorities there that I want to take, he wanted to take me with him traveling. He was going to be traveling. I didn't know about this. He talked to the... So they said that, no, he's our new Bhakta, we want. So then they promised him, he was their good friend, that they would, offer to me. So they told me, listen, we want you to stay here, but this Maharaj, he also wants to invite you to travel with him. So if you stay with us, we're happy. If you go with him, he's our good friend, he's a good devotee, it's a good opportunity also for you. We promised him we would. So I thought about it, and then I decided I would go with him. So I traveled, he took me down to Berkeley. We were there about 6 weeks. This was Gaur Purnim time, 88. We would go on Harinam every day. From Berkeley, you just walk out the street, walk out of the temple door, half a block, you're on Telegraph Avenue, and you just do Harinam right up to the University of Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. So we would do Harinam every day with a group of us, like midday. And then Jyotidhar Swami came down from Vancouver, from Sharanagati Farm, to join Trivikram Swami. And the three of us drove in Trivikram Swami's car. We went down to Los Angeles, we went to Laguna Beach, San Diego. Then we went to Dallas and Houston, New Talavan, New Orleans. We went to Tallahassee and Orlando, I think. Gainesville, Alachua. We met Hridayananda Maharaj was there, Gainesville and Alachua. We went to Atlanta. We went to Hillsborough, North Carolina, and then to Washington, D.C., and then to Philadelphia. And everywhere we went, we stayed a few days, and Maharaj, of course, would give the class, and we would do Harinam with whatever local devotees would come out with us. And then in Philadelphia, he and Trivikram Swami and Jyotidhar Swami were continuing traveling north, and I asked for permission to take leave from the party. Nearby was my parents in New Jersey, so Trivikram Swami gave me some money for the local train, and I took the train over to New Jersey and stayed a week visiting my parents. And I had been attracted to meeting Hridayananda Maharaj in Florida, so I mentioned this to my mother, and I said I would like to go down there, and she sponsored my bus ticket and I called up to some temples in Florida, and I made arrangement to go to the Orlando temple, and went down, took a bus down to Orlando. It's a small preaching center, and then just after I arrived in Orlando, Daru Brahma from the Gainesville Preaching Center came in his pickup truck, and he was on his way down to meet Hridayananda Maharaj, his guru, in Miami, which was the reason I had gone down there. And he saw me, and he remembered that I had come through with Trivikram Swami to Gainesville. So he's like, what are you doing in Orlando? You come down to Florida, you should have come to Gainesville. He was doing the whole Prasadam program in Gainesville at the university alone. And that was sort of the main center was next to Alachua, and the big Prasadam program was there. And so you should have come here, So, and he said, anyway, I'm going down to Miami in my truck. I'm just now going, and Hridayananda Maharaj is there, So why don't you come? I said, sure. So we drove down. At that time, the Miami temple was this a big hotel on the beach. The deities were on the 7th floor. It's very beautiful. And so there was a big festival the whole weekend. Hridayananda Maharaj was there. We would go on morning walk with him, and then when we all went to see off Hridayananda Maharaj at the airport, he was saying different things to the different devotees. And then he turned to me, and I was Paul, Bhakta Paul. And he said, don't go back to Orlando, you should go back with Daru Brahma to Gainesville. So, and help him with the Prasadam program at the University of Florida, Gainesville. And he said, you should learn how to do everything. Cook, clean, preach, And he said, but especially you should learn how to distribute books. So I went back, like he said, with Daru Brahma to Gainesville, and we were doing the Prasadam program at the University of Florida at Gainesville. We would get up and do Tulsi Puja, Mangal Arti at 5 o'clock in the preaching center, just him and me. Then after Mangal Arti, we would drive in his truck out to Alachua, and we would do the rest of Japa time there in Guru Puja, reading Darshanarti. At that time, the deities were just in a trailer. It was just Gaur Nitai. And there was maybe 10 devotees living there. It's not like Alachua now. And we would stay for the Bhagavatam class. And then we would drive back into Gainesville, and we would cut all the vegetables, and then he would cook everything. This was for about 200. Now it's 1,000 plates a day, but at that time it was maybe 200 plates. Then he would cook everything, offer it to the deities. They had Jagannath and Gaur Nitai there, small preaching center. We would load it all up into the van or the truck or whatever, and drive out to the campus and serve out 200 students, then pack it all back up, bring it back to the preaching center, wash all the empty containers, And then next day, same thing. And then on the weekends, we would go to like Orlando or Tampa to the streetlights and distribute books and collect donations at the streetlights. When the light would turn red, we would go car to car like this. Anyway, it's a long story, but gradually, eventually, he brought me up to Atlanta for a festival, Panihati Festival. And there I met Jayapataka Swami, who I later took initiation from. And I first heard him speak at the Panihati Festival in Atlanta, which was very nice. And then later, by Krishna's arrangement, Krishna allowed me to be shifted to the Atlanta temple, where I got to regularly get the association of Jayapataka Swami. He would visit a few times a year, and he was at that time the only GBC there and the only guru that would really visit there. And everyone there was his disciple. The temple president Balabhadra Prabhu was his good friend, and we would have even daily Guru Puja as part of the morning program before Darshanarti and Prabhupada's Guru Puja. In a separate room next to the temple, we would have daily Guru Puja for the picture of Jayapataka Swami and Hridayananda Maharaj, whatever current gurus had disciples in that temple. We would do a full arti, sing Gurudev, Kripa Bindudiya. This was standard. And anyway, so then I got to know him by being based there, and then gradually he invited me to come to India, and now I'm based in India. So that is some of the story of how I came to Krishna consciousness by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his representatives and the devotees of ISKCON and the deities, mercy, different temples. Hare Krishna.